Everyone. Wait for this bus to pass by. Alrighty. So, as you might have seen from the title, I'm going to be talking about the things that I think will happen in the new Hunger Games book. So we don't have a cover yet, but we do have a title. It is going to be called Sunrise on the Reaping. So, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes had come out in 2020. You know, I think it was like, 2019 or whatever, when we found out that it was going to be coming the next year. Because I don't think it was any more than a year. Much like this. This is coming out in March, so less than a year now. Hello. Less than a year. And when that one had first come out, it was just called Panem Novel. Like, the title, when the announcement had come out, not when the book came out, obviously. When the announcement had came out, it was just called Panem Novel. We had no actual cover, no actual title at that point. But this time, we have at least a title. Sunrise on the Reaping. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm not super crazy about that title. I don't know. Sunrise on the Reaping. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason for it. Obviously there is. But it just seems a little too simple. Like, so far my favorite book of the Hunger Games series is The Hunger Games, right? And that's pretty much a straightforward title. The other titles are a little cooler, I would say, like Catching Fire, or Mockingjay. Those ones seem a little bit more catchy, a little bit more symbolic. I mean, Sunrise on the Reaping sounds cool, but the reaping is like just one aspect of the games. It's when they reap the kids for the games. So obviously something big is going to happen. And I don't know how she's going to outdo the original reaping scene from the first book. Like, I think she tried with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I've grown to like it a little bit. However, I thought some of it was just a little over the top. So, Sunrise on the Reaping is going to be about Haymitch and his games. And if you've only seen the movies, because I don't think they have ever actually mentioned what his games were in the movies, despite the fact of him being their mentor. Hey, how are you? I'm good, how are you? I'm talking about the new Hunger Games book that is coming out. Anyways, yeah, if you've only seen the movies, you'll know that he's Katniss and Peeta's mentor. And they're in the 74th game. So by then, the mentors are all, former victors of the games for each district. So Haymitch won the second Quarter Quell. So the Quarter Quell, again, if you're not too familiar, I mean, they didn't mention it in Catching Fire, like briefly during the announcement and everything for those games. But anyway, just kind of recap for you guys. the Quarter Quell basically is a special game that's held every 25 years. So the first Quarter Quell was the 25 games. And that Quarter Quell was people actually had to vote for the kids that were going to go into the games. Like, they didn't just draw their names out of a bowl. The second Quarter Quell, which would have been the 50th games and the one which won, they had double the tributes. So instead of 24 kids, there were 48. And we find out a lot about his games in Catching Fire. Again, if you've only seen the movies, Katniss receives her pin, her Mockingjay pin, from Madge, who is the mayor's daughter. She is completely cut out of the movies. However, in Catching Fire, we learn that it had come from her aunt, like her maternal aunt, so her mom's sister, Maisie. I think her name was Maisie Donner. Anyways, so Maisie had gone into the games as one of the tributes for 12, along with Haymitch. I don't think the other two were ever named. We just know about Haymitch and Maisie. And much like Katniss and Rue, they had allied for a while before, obviously she was no more. We know this because Haymitch won the games. So there's that backstory. Maisie was also a friend of Katniss's mother. So there was like a lot of backstory about the pin, about some of the tributes and their friendships and their connections. Katniss's family and stuff like that. I was really movie. I know people love it, but after reading the book, I was kind of disappointed by the Catching Fire movie because it cut out so much backstory. There's a point where they are training for their Quarter Quell because 75th, so now Katniss and Peeta they end up back going into Quarter Quell. Where is it? Somewhere on states. Yes, I do. I live in one of the states. Anyways. Not to spell Catching Fire too much, but yeah, they do end up back into those. And to prepare, they watch like past games, like, the past Quarter Quell, because that's what they're going into. They want to see how different it is from the normal games. And the games are televised, they're recorded and stuff, so they have a copy of Haymitch's game. And they pretty much watch and see what happens and everything. So I have a feeling that this book, while it probably will have the Hunger Games in it, much like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I don't think it's going to focus a lot on the games. Like, there was a lot in Catching Fire and the Hunger Games before the actual game started. But they did have, a good chunk of the games in there still. I have a feeling this is going to go more towards the way of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, where there's a big chunk before the games and a lot after the games, right? Because we know from Catching Fire how his games go. So unless you want to go like really in depth, it's just going to be like kind of a repeat. Also, we know some of the things that happens to him after the games. and what happens to his family and stuff. So I have a feeling maybe we're going to possibly see his descent into depression and alcoholism. I don't know if we're going to go way into the future when he becomes an adult and starts mentoring and stuff, but I just have a feeling that the way this is going to work, if we're going to focus mainly on Haymitch, is that we're going to see more of the aftermath of his games and all the trouble that had gone down. Some people say that we're probably finally going to learn the name of Katniss's parents, because all through the series they are just referred to as her mother or Mrs. Everdeen or father, Mr. Everdeen, that kind of thing. Whew. I'm walking too fast now. I gotta take a time to... it's only 3:30. Okay, I can stop for a second here. Enjoy the nice breeze. But yeah, because this is going to be back when Haymitch is a teenager, and again, the person that he allied with in the games is a friend of Katniss's mother, it would probably only make sense that her mom finally gets a name. Right? Because at that point, she's not going to be married, and neither is her father. Or neither is Katniss's father. So, they're not going to be adults or working in the mines or the apothecary like she did. So, yeah, it's not going to make sense to refer to them as Mr. and Mrs. Everdeen. But I'm kind of wondering what their names are going to be. I kind of have a feeling that, and it just gives off the vibe, that at least her mom is probably going to have a kind of maybe rural, southern sounding kind of name. You know, sort of like how Lucy Gray is, or Haymitch. One of those kind of names. I know that Katniss's name came from her dad. Like, he came up with that, because Katniss is like a plant. Swamp potato, technically. And then, you know, Primrose is a flower. So I have a feeling that possibly that her mom could have like a flowery kind of name. And if I had to pick, I would say something between like Rose and like Daisy. Her father, I'm not sure. It would be cool if they went deeper into like where their family had originated from, since like they live in Appalachia and she knows that's what it originally was, and you know, they knew it was once North America, mostly the United States. So yeah, maybe a little bit more into their background, maybe some kind of like cultural references would be like interesting to weave in there. Because she sort of kind of hinted at some things, you know, in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Hello. few minutes. I still got time. There's some birdies there. You probably can't see them. But yeah, some people think that Lucy Gray is supposed to be Romani. Other people have said that they believe that Katniss is possibly indigenous. So, it would be maybe interesting to see, how things came about in Panem in 12 based upon, wealth and ethnicity and stuff, because we know that the people who, look more like Katniss live in the poorer area, which is known as the Seam, whereas people who look like Perimeter Mom come from more of, I guess it's Panem's upper class, like the merchant class, as they call them, which are slightly richer, but nowhere near as rich as the, capital. And, that's obviously symbolic of the way that the United States used to be, in terms of how people were treated in legal sense of race and stuff. I say legal sense because, sadly there will always be people who are piece of crap racist. But, that it was more acceptable. And, this is supposed to be like way in the future. So, like, how do we get back to those dark ages, basically, right? I guess what I'm saying is, do we find out more about the history of Panem, since we're not in the eyes of people of the Capitol like we were in Ballad, who don't see anything wrong, or at least most of them didn't see anything wrong with the way things were. I think it's possible that we might get more history of the people, not just the character names and their families and their friendships, but more about how the society of the districts worked. Because again, in Ballad we've seen, some things, but it was told, from more of the perspective. It was third person, but more of the perspective from somebody of the Capitol. And now we're going to get a little bit more history, possibly, from people who live in the districts. At least that's what I think. I think we're going to get more in depth of what happened in his games, not just what we see in Catching Fire, like more details. I think we're going to learn a little bit more about Haymitch's family and his girlfriend. We're going to see how he was before, he started heavily drinking and having to mentor kids who he had to watch die every year. I think we're going to get the names of people, we're going to get more backstory, we're going to know more about, how things changed in Panem, in the districts, from the point of view of the district people. There are some people who say that they don't think that it's going to be told from Haymitch's point of view, which I can see. I hope she would do multiple points of view. That would be interesting. I really wanted a book about Mags, because some people say that it's in the books. I don't remember it being in the books or the movies, but that she had won the 11th games. which would have been the games right after Lucy Gray. And it would be really interesting to find out after all that how they handled the games now. And did Mags actually have a special arena? Because if you remember, from 1 to 10, they were just thrown into like this amphitheater. Nothing really special. So was Mags the first one? Yeah. I think we're possibly going to see other tributes other than Haymitch. Even though it's going to focus on him, I think we're still going to get to see at least a little glimpse of what happened with some of the other ones before him. Then it would be nice to get out of 12 once in a while. Some people have also said that they think that the things that happened with Haymitch and the things that happened with, especially like Finnick, but they would have to jump quite a few years to get to Finnick, right? Because he's only a few years older than Katniss and Peeta, and like, again, Haymitch won the 50th games, and they're in the 74th, so it's like a 20-year gap there, a little bit more than that. But some people say that it's possible that things that she did, not the things that he did to Haymitch and Finnick and Joanna, especially like the last two. If you read Mockingjay and stuff, you'll know what I'm talking about. That is the reason that she grew to hate her cousin so much. Like, I know in Mockingjay, she says something about, he thought she wasn't pretty enough anymore. But obviously, there's more to it, especially after, you will feel that way, at least I do, especially after reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But I do think that Tigris is going to pop back up in a very significant way. Not sure how, but I think especially after she had a much bigger part in Ballad, I think she's gonna stick around and play another important role. But yeah, those are some of the things that I think might happen. Some people think that she would be his stylist. I'm not sure about that, because some people said they don't think that Snow would allow that, and I kind of agree with that. But anyways, yeah, like I said, this is just my thoughts. And thanks for watching, everybody. Do you like the Hunger Games? Let me know what your favorite book is from the series, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.